Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I ever get back, 'cause it's root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame, 'cause it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Welcome to Let's Get To, the baseball podcast from the fans' perspective. Now here's your host, James Christopher.
We are coming to you from Newman Outdoor Field on this episode of Let's Get To, where we are visiting the Fargo Moorhead RedHawks. We're very excited to be out here today. They are still setting up. We're setting up, but there's going to be a great day for baseball. Again, one of the things I'm most happy about is 20 degrees cooler here than it will be in Austin, Texas today. So that's amazing. What else is amazing is we have a great show for you today. Andrew Nelson is going to be here live. We're going to finally get to meet. It's like we've been baseball eHarmony dating, and boy, I hope he likes my hair. But we have a great special guest. DB Sweeney is on the show. That's right. Shoeless Joe Jackson from 8 Men Out is going to be popping in to talk a little bit about making that movie, his love of baseball. And I'm going to find out which player on that cast was the best baseball player in real life. So stay with us.
Go Astros, a focus on H-Town hardball.
So we're going to jump into Go Astros with Andy Tom Chesson, and I'm not telling him George Springer has had to miss the workout today. Guess why?
Because he hurt his shoulder throwing the ball home.
No, because the COVID test isn't back. How can we honestly rely on having a season if it's required for a third-party organization? He actually hit a home run after he hurt his shoulder, which tells you what I know about being able to diagnose orthopedic injury.
Orthopods. Are you diagnosing orthopods again?
I really am. No, Andy, how are we supposed to play a season like this?
We're not.
We get into a tinfoil hat situation with, hey, series against New York. Who knew? Bregman and Altuve and Correa's. How are we supposed to play like this?
We're not. It's not going to happen. I can be wrong. You know, some part of me hopes I am wrong, but there's just no way, because the Astros, even though that's kind of where I myopically focus, this isn't the only team that's being affected like this. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that Bregman and now Springer are missing a workout because their individual test results haven't come back. But I believe the Nationals, the Dodgers, and at least one other team have had the same issues. And that just means that some other media markets haven't honed in on it as much in the smaller markets. Every team is going to have to face this. And if you're going to require a clean test for every organized workout or game, you're going to miss a lot of games. So I guess that extra 30 men that you're carrying down in Corpus is going to get a lot of travel miles, because at a moment's notice, I got a test result. I can fly.
They are now free to move about the country.
That's right.
To quote Southwest Airlines, the unofficial sponsor of Let's Get To.
But the whole thing's a mess. The whole thing is just, they need to scrap it. They need to start planning for 2021. I have no idea how we're supposed to start a season basically a week from today.
You know, when we were first talking about what the season was going to look like, when it looked like we were going to start playing ball July 1st, remember back in those days?
Sure. The heady days of June.
Yeah, that's right. The idea of a pod league seemed dumb. With a 60-game season, the pod league seems like that would have been the solution, because you could have controlled exposure.
Right. The pod league is dumb if you're playing 162 games or 154 or 150. In a 40, 50, 60-game season, there's no reason not to do a pod. And honestly, you could move the pod around if you needed to. I mean, if it just came to that and you thought July 1st, Texas would have worked, and then you realized July 15th, oh no, Texas is going to burn to the ground. Let's move it to Washington State and play at T-Mobile. Well, you could have done that. But now we're going to try to play in 30 different markets, or I guess 27 different markets, with 30 teams traveling, no isolation, no call for isolation. The league and the players union isn't going to even attempt to try to isolate the players. So George Springer sitting out is the tip of the iceberg, because you're going to have a big series. And if you want to get tinfoil hat, to your point, the Astros travel to Los Angeles towards the end of the season to play the Dodgers. If they're having to test local, who's to say that the Dodgers testing facility doesn't just lose Altuve, Verlander, Springer, Correa, Bregman? You can't play today. We can't find your tests. Sorry.
Especially with the situation, seems like, I think starting with Arizona, that they are going to start locally sourcing testing. And because before the problem was it was one testing facility.
Right.
It's shocking to me because I thought that there were tests that you could get the results back in 12 hours or something.
There are, but they have to be available. They have to be plentiful. And there are optics around Major League Baseball, no matter how much some people want it to be intact and be playing, taking tests from people who actually need it, like doctors and nurses and paramedics and police officers and firefighters.
Those essential workers we've heard so much about.
But no, Aaron Judge needs to be tested 7 times a week.
So, we got into a bit of a bit of a conversation you and I had already actually had in pandemic time years ago. I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, about the idea that Major League Baseball could really, as we know it, burn to the ground as a result of this. And full disclosure to our fans, we came in wanting to talk about rotations, but who cares? Yep. Who cares?
Part of me is excited that Justin Verlander might get 13 starts in a season if it happened, but it's not going to happen, so I don't care. Great. We only need our 5th starter 8 times this season. Who cares? We don't need him any times. But yeah, my shame spiral last night, which I do from time to time, and sorry you had to be a witness to that.
Happy to do it.
It's just that baseball, as it's constructed, is dangerously on the precipice. And when I say baseball, I mean Major League Baseball. Is dangerously on the precipice of burning itself completely to the ground and ceasing to exist. And I'm not talking metaphorically, I'm talking about literally. Because I think part of what we were talking about is that you're quickly getting to a point where, unless you could have a league that was just the Yankees, the Mets, the Red Sox, and the Dodgers, you're going to have a lot of teams because of the pandemic that can't afford operations because of the way baseball is set up. It's going to be very difficult. And I'm not picking on Kansas City because I'm sure they have ways. But if you don't have a great TV contract.
Let's look at Oakland. Let's look at Oakland.
Oakland is probably a good example.
Because they share a market with a team people do like, which is.
Yeah. So they have a crappy TV contract. They don't have the best radio coverage, from what I understand, listening to Stu Clary on a prior segment on the show. They don't receive a lot of revenue from their stadium because Oakland Alameda County still owns it and they're still leasing it. So they don't have a kind of a favorable ownership stadium situation. And they're constantly looking to move if they can't get a new situation, which is kind of part and parcel with not being financially viable long term. If you have a team like that can't play a 20 season, and we have no real guarantees that there's going to be a 2021 season if we can't have the 20 season, you're now talking a year and a half of no revenues. And a year and a half of no revenues means basically the end of Major League Baseball as an organization, because I don't think you have enough teams or enough markets that would even be able to go in and supplement those teams. I don't think there's anybody going, oh, hey, Oakland, move your team over here because we have money. Well, they don't. Nashville won't have any money with a year and a half of lower tax revenues and record unemployment. And because baseball is so back-asswards about how they deal with each other in that 30-team fraternity, there is no help coming from a larger market. There is no money coming from a national television contract. The NBA and the NFL can lean on their national TV partners and maybe not have the revenue that they're expecting, but because their games are so television-driven, they will continue to exist with some tweaks. And, yeah, maybe there's a hiccup of a team or two that has to reorganize. But you're talking in Major League Baseball where it's maybe 15 of the teams immediately have trouble. Maybe 10 of those file bankruptcy or some other financial relief. what are you left with at that point?
It's interesting that you brought up a year and a half of no revenue, because really it could be 2.5, because
sure.
you and I have gone from being relatively positive about how we were handling this pandemic
Sure.
to we're driving off a cliff if we can't figure it out now. Although there's a again, tinfoil hat thinks a lot of this will get resolved in November, but who knows? But don't forget that the contract with the union is up after next season.
Sure.
So there could be a work stoppage as a result of that.
And that's part of the year and a half. I don't believe, let's say everything goes great. Just nothing I'm saying is real. We're about to play 60 games. It's going to go off without a hitch. We crown a champion. We go into spring 2021. We play a full season. Well, wait a minute. The players know the CBA is sitting out here. The owners know the CBA is sitting out here. There's no guarantee you would even finish a 2021 season, because there might be a work stoppage based on the idea that there's no negotiation happening. Both sides ended this pre-20 season fiasco in a stalemate. And basically the players union threw their hands up and said, just schedule the games, we'll show up. The owners aren't moving off their lines. The players aren't moving off their lines. And we've seen similar things in baseball history. The CBA wasn't up in August of 1994, and yet games stopped and there was no World Series.
Right.
I see a similar situation where even if we could play a 2021 season, it's not going to get finished. And I think between that and people having less disposable income to spend because unemployment's still hovering around 18% or 14% or whatever it is, and there's no clear end in sight with the pandemic, that baseball becomes an afterthought because they can't get their act together and act as one unit.
And unlike, like you said, the NFL and the NBA, you can't, even if you already can't afford to go to those games, so you watch them on TV.
Even the MLS and WNBA have a plan. Baseball literally just like, we can't figure out anything, throw up some games, see if it works. If it doesn't, oh well. And that, of course, trickles down to the focus of your show, which if there's no major leagues, why is there minor leagues? So now you're looking at independent league, and this is where I really got spirally last night, independent league and college ball. Because that would be, if there's no MLB as it stands now, that would be the alternative. Is you'd have smaller groups, regional groups even, of teams, around the Houston area. You could have a team in Round Rock and in Sugar Land and in Corpus because they're stadiums. A few other places, Midland, if you want to throw it in there, if you want a real travel destination. Love you, Rockhounds. San Antonio, but you have, a number of teams that could play that there'd be no travel restriction, but there'd be no TV either. So you'd have to actually go to those games. Which, long term, at the end of every disaster movie, they have the flower coming up from the concrete. Long term, that's how baseball survives. Long term, baseball goes back to being a regional thing, I think, where you have smaller leagues that people actually attend the games and enjoy the games and learn the game and pass it on from father to son, and all of the fanfare and, Field of Dreams type stuff you want to plug in there. But the way Major League Baseball is handling this and their immediate future, that may be the only way that baseball continues as an entity.
Part of why I wanted to bring this up or have this be the topic when you were talking about this last night is that Ken Burns said as much. Ken Burns said, I don't remember the interview. I heard it secondhand, but I believe he was on CBS this morning or something. And he said that baseball won't go back to America's pastime until it leads in a time of crisis again. Mm-hmm. And he pointed out that they are not doing that now.
No. They're actually the worst example of leading at a crisis. I don't even know if they're aware there is a crisis. I mean, that's just how back-asswards they have approached this entire thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'll be honest, like the thing that I learned especially this past trip to North Dakota was they love that team up there, and they have sold out. Now, of course, they're sold out at 30%, but the point is they immediately sold out their whole season because they love that team.
Yeah, and I think that's how much more would they love the team if their players stayed year after year?
Right.
if it's an independent game and you get attached to the players, which we do as part of nature, I'm a huge George Springer fan. I'm a huge Jose Altuve fan. If you're an independent team, if you're the Sugarland Skeeters, and you have a solid core of players that comes back year over year, that's how you build a fan base. That's how you build love for a franchise beyond just what Brandios can do for your logo.
Right.
So there's a way back for baseball as a sport. And I don't know that it's that far away in that realm. I just know Major League Baseball is so far away from that these days. And they appear to not even recognize that their house is on fire.
Well, that seems like a good place to leave it for this episode of Let's Get To, this episode of Go Astros. Andy, you and I will be on before this airs. No, we're going to be on together next week discussing the Constellation Energy League. And I know that you're a big bit of Lightning Sloss fan since day one.
Oh, yeah, from day one is accurate. And the El Tigres, I'm right there. Can't stand the Team Texas. I don't know what it is about them, but just not my cup of tea. I don't have frosted tips, though, so maybe that's what I'm missing.
Show me the merch. The best from the pro shop.
And welcome back to another edition of Show Me the Merch. And we have got some great stuff from our trip to North Dakota. So we'll begin in Fargo. Listen, we had a great time at the Fargo Moorhead RedHawks game. They have one of the best pro shops that I've ever been to. A really nice, easy to navigate, particularly in COVID setup. And I thought that the staff at the shop couldn't have been nicer, especially knowing that I was from out of town. So I want to start off with what we got. So first, I got, as I always do, my logo baseball. Definitely get that in a case. And then, this is where he sold us. This is a replica jersey from their 20th anniversary season that they were selling for $15. And, you tell me there's a jersey for $15 and I'm in. And then I also got one of the best fitting hats I've ever got. I love this look. I love the biting of the bat and the bird biting the bat, the large F and the M. But the cool thing is on the side, you have the 25th anniversary logo. I think a lot of people think of independent teams and collegiate summer league teams as kind of being teams that maybe just come on the scene and don't last very long. 25 years playing independent ball in Fargo Moorhead is an incredible accomplishment. I only wish that they could have really celebrated more fully this season had it not been for COVID. And hopefully next year they'll be able to really get after it and really celebrate what an amazing accomplishment that is. And so I'm leaving Fargo, making the 4-hour drive or so back to the Minnesota airport. And I know that I'm on track to get there super early, but honestly don't feel real comfortable being there as early as I was on track to be. With COVID, I didn't want to sit with my mask on. I didn't want to try to do all of those things. And so I recognize one of the towns I'm passing of St. Cloud that we follow, the St. Cloud Rocks. So we pull up, get a shot of some really great shots of the stadium. And on a whim, I'm like, I'll see if the pro shop's open. So I walk in, there are two gentlemen there. Pro shop is in fact not open. However, they open it for me and I walk away with this really sweet St. Cloud Rocks hats. And like I said in a previous episode, we are doing something very different with how we cover baseball. We are trying to celebrate teams. We're celebrating brands. We are not doing gotcha journalism. We are not trying to get into Twitter wars with people. We are trying to be celebratory of all of this sport. But it means we need partners. And we're doing this on our own money. We have some sponsorships that we are thankful for, but we're still trying to break even on the show. And this isn't to say like, woe is us. But what it means is that if we are going to take a trip and if we are going to go cover a team, that team has to be a partner. And seeing how St. Cloud reacted to some dude from Texas, who for all they know could have been the outbreak monkey, showed up with a mask on and everything, asking questions. As they were starting their day, they were nothing but nice, and they went and got a hat and all of that stuff. And so it tells me that, I'm going to get out to a St. Cloud Rocks game next year, and I'm going to do my best to make sure everybody knows how great they are, how cool that brand is, and really checks it out. The same goes for Fargo. They completely rolled out the red carpet for us. And so as a result, we're going to pay that forward. I think that's the way to be. So it makes me feel really good going into season 3 of this show, knowing that there are a couple of teams and a couple of brands out there that I think will be good partners. I think it's what we need more than anything.
From the bleachers, the Let's Get To Game of the Week.
And we are coming to you live from not the bleachers, although this is from the bleachers, but we have Andrew Nilsson here in reality. And I feel like I'm Bill Murray. No, is Bill Murray or Dan Aykroyd? That's just.
Oh, I don't remember.
And Ghostbusters. And we're in the Roger Maris suite at Newman Outdoor Field. How's it going, man?
It's going good. How are you?
A little bit of baseball. It's not 1,000 degrees, so it can't be bad.
It's a beautiful day.
So you're actually familiar with this league already.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about why this league is something people should pay attention to.
So the American Association is independent baseball. They're not affiliated with the major leagues. If you ask them what level of play it is, you'll generally get responses ranging from it's about equivalent to high A or double A. It depends a little bit on the year and the crop of recruits they're able to get. I would say that overall, you're looking at a pretty good fielding and batting product. The pitching is a little hit and miss, but you're going to see high quality competitive baseball. And that's one of the keys too, is that these teams are playing to win. This isn't a player development league like the affiliated minor leagues are, or to a certain extent collegiate baseball is, where it's kids learning to play. These guys are playing to win.
I will be honest. I've been impressed with so much of what we've seen. There's been a couple of plays. Whoever playing shortstop for the RedHawks made a couple of not easy catches on some pop-ups that really could have been tweeners in any other league.
For sure. The Dogs third baseman's made a couple of good plays too.
Speaking of dogs, the food I think has been great too.
Yeah.
One of the things I really look for at a ballpark, and I'll be honest, you don't see it all the time. I don't know that I felt it in Chicago necessarily. Mm-hmm. It does feel like there's at least an attempt to catch a little bit of a local flavor.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
I do think we had good beer and good dogs.
Definitely. And there's some local beer representation, which is always nice. Got some Fargo Brewing brews, so that's good.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, what do you think about as far as like the park goes, as far as its design?
It's really nice. It's a fairly large park, I would say, for the kind of market it is. It feels spacious since we're at reduced capacity.
It does. I feel for them sometimes. Like, they definitely went at a really low percentage of people that are here, which means it looks empty. But
right, but the crowd is present. They're paying attention. They're cheering. I've heard people cheering for players, so that's always an encouraging thing. That at this kind of level, people are familiar with some of the players that are out on the field. And that's another thing you get with the American Association is you get players who are back sometimes 2, 3, 4 years at a clip. So that
you're saying that, yeah.
So that fan bases do get to know some of the players better than you might necessarily in an affiliated league or a collegiate league where somebody's just passing through more.
I do think that's key, because you can, everything when we talk to a team, we talk to a GM, it's always like we can't market the players because we don't know who will be here or who will pan out. Like sometimes they'll roll the dice in an affiliated team and say we think Yordan Alvarez is going to stay with us for the whole season, and then sometimes by the time his bobblehead night rolls around, he hasn't been there in months. He's either gone up or he's gone down. It matters, doesn't it, to build a little bit of a unique hometown feel?
Definitely. I'm a big St. Paul Saints fan. Sorry, guys, I'm wearing RedHawks today. I still love you.
These are $15 jerseys, guys, which is going to be our next topic of conversation.
Great deal, and they have a really nice pro shop. But so the Saints had a player retire this year. They had a guy named Brady Schumacher who played for them for the last 3 years, just home run hitter, mashed balls like crazy. He hit a home run in all of the games I went to last year.
Oh, wow.
Won the American Association Home Run Derby. And by all accounts, really great guy, a big clubhouse leader and everything. So he was a big fan favorite. And he announced he was retiring before the season started this year. And there was a big outpouring from the Saints both put forth a lot of effort to recognize him and his retirement. But there was also a big outpouring from fans because they knew who Brady was. Mm-hmm. He'd been around for a few years and he was a recognizable presence and we'd seen him hit a whole bunch of dingers. So it was nice to see him get some recognition as one of the good guys in indie ball for sure.
So before we talk about the pro shop, which is something that's always fun for you and I to talk about. We were sitting down there and you're kind of giving me the history of this league, because in Texas, we only have one team in this league. We have the Cleburne Railroaders, which is still relatively new.
You've got the Texas Airhawks too.
Oh, the Airhawks.
Yeah, so you've got two.
Educating me. Then why didn't we get a pod if there's two teams? Never mind. But you were explaining to me, like there's like these guys have been here. This is their 20-year jersey, which they were selling for 15, and we got the 25-year hat on. How hard is it, do you think, to be able to build, like the Chicago Dogs have a great brand. Mm-hmm. These guys have a great brand.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you got to sell the front of the jersey. How hard is it, do you think, to keep something like this going?
There's been a lot of coming and going from the American Association and a little bit from the Northern League, which the American Association largely grew from before that. But there have been some teams that have been around for a long time. The St. Paul Saints have been around since 1993. Mm-hmm. The RedHawks have been around since 96. The Sioux Falls Canaries and I believe the Sioux City Explorers were also both 1993 teams. They're in the American Association. So these teams really go a long ways towards building fan experience and doing community outreach and really getting community buy-in, because that's what they live and die on. And some of it's the communities that they're based in. Sometimes some teams you'd think would be a natural fit don't work out for whatever reason. They couldn't keep a team in Madison with the Northern League for some reason.
Which they have a Northwoods League now.
Yeah, which is one of the most successful collegiate league teams.
Weird.
But it's so capricious almost. But
I feel like we need balloons to drop, because you become the first person to use capricious on the show. Like, that's the magic word. It's like dusty because no one uses it.
Yeah, but because of that, I feel like these independent league teams in the American Association, and I'm sure the other leagues too, really go the extra mile to make sure that you feel appreciated as a fan, that they know that they care about your experience and that they care about you coming out, and they care about the community.
So that does wrap us up from here from Newman Outdoor Field. Andrew, real quick, why don't you tell everybody you're going to be helping me out with a new segment. We call this a tease in the business.
All right. So I'm going to be bringing you Raiders of the Lost Diamond starting soon. And we're going to be exploring more of the lost and hidden gems of baseball history, delving into some minor league and other teams that you probably haven't heard of that have interesting and fun stories.
That's right. So you're going to take an episode and I'm going to take an episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right. Well, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Who's on first? The Let's Get To Local 9. Brought to you by Marco Fine Arts.
So we're excited to be joined on Let's Get To by Ryan Hernandez, the newest member of the Round Rock Harrymen. I guess you're all new members since it's a new team, but you are repping the University of Houston. How's it going, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing great. So let's talk a little bit about you before we kind of get into what's been going on with the team. So how did you end up at U of H coming from Boston, Mass?
So the way that I ended up at U of H was I ended up going to the university called SUNY Albany, and that's just Albany in New York. And now I got a chance to hit with one of my hitting coaches, and he has super good connections with the San Jack coaches, and he just kind of like was talking to them for me and was like, hey, he's a great kid, works hard. And I guess the things didn't go well with Albany. So I took a chance and I went to San Jack, and from San Jack I performed, and Houston was one of the first schools to talk to me. And I said, yeah, let's go, let's do it. And I had never been to Texas before. I never knew it was an actual place. I swear, people up north they think it's a phantom place. It doesn't exist, but trust me, it does exist because I love it here.
Did they ask you like if you got a horse when you got here? That was always what people think.
So before I got here, I literally thought that the roads were all dirt roads and tumbleweeds. I really did think that. Like, I didn't even know that there were buildings and stuff here. But
now you're living in the fourth biggest city in the country, the most diverse. Yeah, it's crazy.
I love it. Of course.
So talk me through then, what would was this your first season at U of H?
Yeah. So
And then
this
you get
was my
interrupted.
first. Yeah. So this was my first season at U of H. We were about 15 games in, and we were competing every single game. I mean, we were just one or two runs off of about 80% of our games. So you add 2 runs, you minimize 1 run or so, and you're in the top 25. So Houston was we were a pretty strong team this year, and I feel like we were really close to just being one of the best teams in the country. But it's the name of the game. Baseball is a complicated sport. Little things happen that affect it in a big way. So you can't really do anything about it. You just have to keep on moving forward. So.
Yeah, it's that only game, right, where you got to play the opponent and then you play the game itself. Like the game's out to get you.
Yeah,
what was it like to?
Team.
Yeah, what was it like emotionally for you to get shut down and then you get the opportunity to come play in Round Rock?
So I was up in Boston when this was all happening, and it was at the moment it was a hot spot there, and no one could really go out, so you could literally had to quarantine and work out inside your house. And thank God I have a big backyard. I was able to throw in my backyard, hit some in my backyard, and it was really tough because you don't have many places to go work out when everything is shut down.
Right.
So I just took advantage, and I just started working on little things because you can't really work on hitting off of live pitchers when there's not many pitchers up north and everything is shut down, like I said. But so there was only very few things that you could do to help yourself, stay in shape and continue working. But as soon as I got the phone call about this team, I took straight advantage. I didn't even let him finish. He said, "Hey, you want to come down to Dell Diamond?" I'm like, "Yep, sign me up. Whatever, whatever it takes. I'm there." And
so, I got to imagine one of the things you're worried about as a player is, as a hitter in particularly, is your timing. But your timing, you're dropping bombs, man. And the pitch, and Ryan hits it deep and far. This one's got a chance, kids, and this ball is gone. Touch them all, Ryan. How quickly was it to get back in the swing of things?
So the first few games was kind of tough because I hadn't seen live pitching in a while. But over the course of over the time, it got much easier to see the ball. And I always say, if you see the ball, you have a better chance of hitting it. So timing and seeing the ball, the first few days it was really rough. But then I just got back into swing things. I made minor adjustments, and started getting some extra work in the cage with a couple of my teammates. And the more work you put in, the more you get out. So we just kept all working, and then the whole team started exploding together. So
yeah, we were there for the 19-2 game. That was that was nuts.
Yeah, the Hairy Men are a really good hitting team, and right now it's not being shown because I feel like we have a little something that I don't know that we can fix really fast. I mean, it's something easily fixable, but I think we can be back to that 19 run scoring team in no time. Probably by tonight, honestly.
I'm going to be out there Friday, so let's get it then. One of the things that I think, I've been watching this game all my life. I really feel like you're great to watch because I think you're a physical specimen, and I think that you can obviously swing the bat, and you made a really good athletic play at first. But you seem like you have a great attitude about all of this. How is it to stay, like you said, you were struggling at first. Was there any moment of like, am I ever going to get it back? Or were you just like that focused on your process?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I was kind of worried a little bit, but I wouldn't say too worried. I was like, hey, what's going on? And I just did some self-eval, talked to my dad because he's been seeing me hit forever. Yeah. Talked to some of my teammates. Your teammates are your best critics. They're seeing what you're doing right now. They can give you great advice. Doesn't mean you have to take it all, but they can see things that you're not seeing because you're in the moment. So after taking advice from my teammates, and talking to my dad, I noticed that it was simply my timing and, getting my foot down on time, and I wasn't recognizing the ball soon enough. So, and then those first 4 days, I just focused on seeing the ball and taking my time relaxing, having fun, and it all just comes back naturally once you start to have fun and you start seeing the ball, and you just relax at the plate and have fun. It's all it is.
Like I said, you guys look like you're having a great time, and I know you've got another 2-3 weeks in the season, right? So
Yeah.
time to close in on the chunkless. So you're a big Red Sox guy, right?
Huge Red Sox guy.
Now, as someone who's competing at a high level, like how much time do you get to actually still be a fan? Like, playing summer ball and all this stuff.
Yeah. So honestly, not really much, and I haven't been able to keep up as much as I used to back in high school, but I still get my alerts all the time, and I'm still getting, all the little messages from them, and I have followed them on Twitter, and I see what's going on. But honestly, it's tough to be a fan when you're in season and you're spending so much time either in the classroom or, on the field and all that stuff. So it's a little tricky, but you still have a little part of them by having the alerts and seeing what's going on.
So I'm going to look down the road, and I know that you can't as an athlete, but let's say, you get drafted. At what point do you have to separate, or have you thought about that? Like, I can't be a Red Sox fan anymore if the Colorado Rockies draft me.
Yeah,
is that a thing that you think about, or no?
Yeah, I know that's a big issue that that me and my family joke about all the time, and they're like, they're super hard Red Sox fans. Like, what if the Yankees draft you? We can't be your fan. Like, we can only be your fan. We're not going to support the Yankees, but we'll be your fan. But it's funny. My grandma says she'll convert to any team that I get drafted to. Hopefully one day, that's a goal of mine. But it's really funny. We always joke around about it, but hardcore Red Sox fans can be changed with someone that influential to them. So.
Well,
hopefully.
And grandmas are the best that way anyway. I got to be honest, Ryan, like I said, watching you field the position, I don't think I've seen a first baseman as athletic as you since like Jeff Bagwell. So, which is, from your neck of the woods. Yeah. So that was the biggest comparison I made. So
appreciate it.
So much fun to watching you. We'll see you this weekend. Thanks so much for being on Let's Get To, man.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
It has been really cool watching Ryan play at the Dell Diamond for the Harrymen. The energy that comes on that field from all of those players has been just a blast to watch, particularly at this time during COVID. And we do want to congratulate Ryan for being named the TCL, the Texas Collegiate League Player of the Week.
On deck, the Let's Get To interview, brought to you by Fine Line Sportswear.
So we're excited to welcome the Let's Get To. It is a privilege and an honor to welcome actor DB Sweeney. I should say actor and director. DB, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Looking forward to getting baseball back underway.
I know it's weird because we're 8 days away, and I want to talk about that. But first things first, I want my moment to be able to go full Chris Farley talking to Paul McCartney. I'm a big Lonesome Dove guy. Do you think Dish and Laura get together at the end of the show?
You know what? I always felt like they did until they went out and did that sequel where they kept them apart. But I thought, they're at Angelica Houston's house there in the prairie, and I thought he takes her inside and they lived happily ever after. But the sequel proved me wrong a little bit.
I did read the sequel novel, and she ended up with P, and I was like, okay, no way. Look, P's great, but no way she picks P over Dish. Thanks for indulging me that. I've been wanting to ask that the whole time. So you're a big baseball guy. When did you get in baseball in the first place, and some of your sort of what team do you follow, and kind of your maybe some key moments in your life?
Yeah, well, I got into baseball as a very young kid, like a lot of us do, and my favorite player was Carl Yastrzemski. So even though I was growing up on Long Island, I became a Boston Red Sox fan. And Carl Yastrzemski is from Long Island, which is one of the reasons that I was so intrigued by him. His town is about 10 minutes away from my town, and he had such a cool name, and the Red Sox had that magical run, the Impossible Dream season. And so that was all right when I was having a baseball awakening. So I've always sort of followed the Red Sox right up until the moment where I saw Ben Affleck and J-Lo in the front row, and then I figured I better switch to the White Sox.
I love everything about that answer. Long-suffering Red Sox fan then, because I'm a long-suffering Astros fan. And so both teams really recently kind of got things moving, although there's a little bit of drama behind mine. But
What is it about baseball and pain? It seems like it's pain, right?
It really is, and I've been living in Chicago now in the suburbs of Chicago for about the last 6 years. So hanging around a lot of, the formerly long-suffering Cubs fans. And when they won, I was lucky enough to be there for Game 6 and 7 in Cleveland. And, I love baseball, but I was kind of rooting for the Indians because I knew what it meant for the Cubs, which was something changes. And when the Red Sox won it finally in 2004, something changes, but your relationship with the team. Not that you want your team to lose, but there is something of a shared history and a shared suffering that is diminished.
It's interesting you say that. My brother and I, we grew up pretty much at the Astrodome. Now I'm in Austin, so I'm a little bit far away, but I still go 8-10 times a year to Minute Maid. And he gets angry because there are people that weren't there when they lost 105 games. And I think that's what you're talking about. You build an allegiance when you're losing.
Well, it wasn't just Ben Affleck, although that was a big part of it. It was also the pink hats at Fenway Park, the pink Boston hats. It's like there's no pink Boston hat. It's like, that might be some WNBA hat, but don't bring the pink Astros hat. I love it when the ladies are there, but if you're an Astros fan, wear an Astros hat. If you're, don't bring out that garbage.
So you obviously played Shoeless Joe Jackson in 8 Men Out, which I think it's my top. I rank everything. It's my number 7 baseball movie of all time.
Nice.
Little bit about researching that part because it's leading to a question I have about Field of Dreams. What did you really learn about Shoeless Joe when you were prepping for that movie?
Well, I did a lot of research at the Hall of Fame Library in Cooperstown, which is a really cool resource. It's not open to the public, but I had some friends who got me through Sports Illustrated, a friend. So I got in there, spent 3 days there researching. And I also did a lot of other work, which, this is all pre-internet in the 80s. So it was a lot of microfiche and a lot of libraries and old books and newspapers. It was really fun. And, what I learned didn't really help me in the movie because what I found out was that, number one, he was guilty. Number two, that everybody was guilty. Everybody was betting on games and throwing games. And the greatest thing about the story that's not in the movie is that not only were they guilty in 1919, they were getting ready to throw the World Series in 1920. And that's when all the events of the movie come down. So they had to compress it in the movie. But Shoeless Joe Jackson was playing baseball in 1920. In August, he was hitting .390. He was on his way to his greatest season ever. And they were already conspiring to throw the next World Series. So it wasn't just the White Sox. It was everybody. Ty Cobb. Baseball players in that era felt like the fans didn't really care. As long as you won the series, like if you had a 4-game series with the Tigers, the first 2 games are on the level. But now if the Tigers win the first 2, then they might, reach out to the White Sox, say, and arrange to lose the 3rd one. And then the 4th game is on the level. And everybody was in on it. All the bettors knew about it. All the players knew about it. And it was just part of the economy of the game. So they had to make figurehead scapegoats out of the White Sox in order to save the game. And the same way that Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa came along and sort of saved baseball after the lockout, Babe Ruth emerged and saved baseball after the Black Sox scapegoating. Because like I said, everybody was doing it.
All right, so I want to pivot, but I'm going to go back to my kudos to your performance as Shoeless Joe Jackson. Everybody loves Field of Dreams, and it's about this reclamation. I don't think that movie gives the Shoeless Joe in that movie. I don't think gives us anything sympathetic. No offense to Field of Dreams, but when I watch the movie, I think about your performance in that film as the prequel, and then I'm sad. Of course, now you just told me it doesn't matter that they were all cheating. So. But I think your performance brings a human element that, in many ways, I feel like Field of Dreams kind of missed.
Well, Ray Liotta is a great actor, and that was one of the biggest blunders of my career. They actually asked me to play Shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams, and I was a former college baseball player and new to Hollywood. I'd done a bunch of plays, 30 plays or something, and it was 8 Men Out was I think my 3rd or my 4th movie or something like that. I was really new. And now they offered me another baseball movie. So I was, in my stupidity, I was thinking, they're going to only think I can play baseball players. So I was worried about being typecast. And I passed on that one. And the reality is I had 6 months to prepare for 8 Men Out. I learned to hit left-handed. I really dove into it and spent 2 months with a minor league team. And, there was a great life experience and a great luxury of preparation that Ray Liotta didn't have. And Ray doesn't have a baseball background. And I didn't understand the casting from the beginning because Ray is as New Jersey as they come.
Oh, really?
And, and so it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, there were a lot of guys I think that would have been a better choice. Woody Harrelson, or there was a ton of guys around at that time that skew Southern, even in the pre-McConaughey days. Where you get somebody who gives you that Greenville, South Carolina vibe, and But Field of Dreams is a phenomenal movie, and I wish I'd been part of it.
I really think, really for me in Field of Dreams, the issue was the script anyway. I don't think it was necessarily Ray's performance. It was almost like, hey, we all know he's sad because we saw 8 Men Out. We can skip that part. So I was thinking, like, your performance is so human.
Oh, thanks.
But speaking about scapegoating, and like I'm going to go to the Astros because this is obviously what people want to talk about. I have a pretty big online presence, and anytime something that the Astros do something wrong, people come after me about or want to know. And I think most Astros fans were like, yeah, they cheated and it sucks. Lots of other people did too. But the more that doesn't come out, I think is when we kind of foxhole it up a little bit. Like, it's like, well, it does feel like there's almost baseball's picking a few teams to go after to save face for the rest of the league.
There's such a weird culture of rules and cheating in baseball. Like it's some of it is enshrined in the game. Like, obviously when you lead off first base, you're sort of cheating towards second. That's part of it. And how big of a lead can you steal on your way to stealing the base? And the stealing signs is as old as the game. And players in Shoeless Joe Jackson's era, the spitball was legal and the shine ball was legal. And there were all kinds of ways players used to alter the ball because, they'd play one game with maybe 4 baseballs, and a lot of foul balls would be given back to the players. And so the baseball's always been manipulated. Guys have always slid hard around second base, outside the baseline, but certain things seem to be out of bounds. And I don't know about I don't have a dog in the Astros fight. But I feel like if you knew they were stealing your signs, why didn't you figure something else out? It's not that hard. It's not that hard to change your signs. You just got to be a little smarter, and you have to ask your catcher to work a little harder and your pitchers to be a little more alert. And unfortunately, baseball players, not to stereotype too hard, are not the brightest animals.
No, one of our co-hosts who's in the segment before you refers to them as meatheads with some degree of regularity, which is weird for the show we cover. But yeah, like the LA Times did a whole bit about it, and Kershaw admitted to not changing his signs, in which everybody went, well, why? Like, why not?
Well, you only throw 3 pitches, right? There's only 3 variables, and there's pretty much 4 corners of the plate. There's 4 quadrants that you're throwing to, right? So you only need 2 signs that you can change on every pitch. And you don't have to be like a cryptologist to figure it out. But, you just basically – you can have something like whoever the batter that just hit, whatever the second digit of his number is. So if the batter who just batted was number 15, the 5th sign is the sign, and then and then a part of your body is one of the 4 quadrants. It's real easy. The next batter, it changes. The next batter is number 7. So this is 7th sign. Or the first, you know what I mean? It's not that hard to figure out a way to confound the other team. And if you're too stubborn or too stupid like Clayton Kershaw, that's why he has the postseason record he has.
Exactly. Speaking back to the 8 Men Out cast, take yourself out of the equation because you played college ball. Who was the best ball player on the team?
Charlie Sheen, hands down. And Charlie was the greatest guy in the bar too, so he was a double threat. He was. I actually have a funny story about Charlie because we did this movie No Man's Land before 8 Men Out. It was my second movie, and Charlie was hired on in the wake of Platoon coming out. It was by Orion, which bought Platoon, and I'd been hired first, and they brought Charlie in. We were both coming off Vietnam movies. I had Gardens of Stone, and so anyway, they
great film, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And they hired me to do. To play No Man's Land. And then about a month later, I was learning how to tune Porsche garages. I was very methody preparing actor at this early stage. And I still am. I mean, I still feel like it's very important to learn the skills that your character does. But I was never one of those guys like, oh, call me Shoeless Joe while I'm taking a leak. I always thought that was like the height of stupidity. But, whatever, worked for Sean Penn. He stole a few Oscars with it. But so Charlie was doing Wall Street in New York. We had just finished No Man's Land. We became good friends. I went to visit him on the set of Wall Street in New York because I was living in New York. And I was signed on to play Shoeless Joe Jackson. And John Sayles said, can you get any of your Hollywood buddies to play some of these other parts? And I said, well, maybe Charlie. But all the good parts were gone. So I said, Charlie, let's do this movie about the World Series. I'll be the left fielder. You'll be the center fielder. I didn't tell him the left fielder was Shoeless Joe Jackson and the center fielder was Joe Schmo. So he never read the script. So he finishes Wall Street. He shows up in Indiana where we're filming the movie. And I bump into him in the bar, and he's got on his signature baseball hat, and he's smoking a dart. because it's the 80s and you can still smoke a dart in the bar, and he's drinking a beer and reading the script. And I come in and he goes, Dave, I'm on page 40. Where's my part? And I said, it's not a big part, Charlie, but it's a good part. And so he didn't quit, which I thought was awesome. They wrote up a couple scenes for him, and he got to play baseball, and he had a great time. And, we had a terrific friendship that lasted many years. I haven't seen him in a long time. I mean, he sort of lost me at hookers and crystal meth. But no, that all came well after we were, hanging out. But he really is a great guy, and I'm sorry for the trouble that he had over the last few years.
Yeah, it was sad. I mean, and I kind of guessed that's who you would say. I mean, he's Wild Thing Vaughn, right? Like you got to figure
There's a lot of him in that part, but he was a pretty good player. I mean, he could sling it pretty good, and he's not a big guy, so he couldn't hit it very far. But he loved the game. Big Cincinnati Reds fan, and it was fun being around Charlie.
So, obviously you're following the game, and it's been a very weird off season. What have you thought about how this has all kind of gone down with the way Major League Baseball? It almost feels like 1994 again with the argument, only with the pandemic in the background. And then we were staring down the barrel of another potential work stoppage after 2021. Where do you think the game is now? The Major League game, I should say.
Well, I think, unfortunately, they missed a massive opportunity to really become, again, America's pastime because, you could argue my son's 18 years old. He's more interested in the NBA than MLB or the NFL. But the NFL and NBA have both gone full force into this social justice idea and the players dictating the terms of the entertainment and so forth. And I think Major League Baseball had a chance to say, you know what, there's a pandemic going on. We can't agree on the money. You can't pay us what we're worth. There's not going to be any fans. But we're going to do this for you guys. We're going to come out of the corn, and we're going to play baseball. And everybody would have fallen in love with baseball again. And you would have had the season tickets for the 2021 season would have sold like teams that the Marlins would have sold out.
Yeah.
Because people would have been like, thank you. This is what we've been waiting for during this stupid pandemic. Instead, you got guys that are saying, I'm not playing for anything less than the $17 million I'm owed this year, which is so tone deaf to the suffering of most Americans. And baseball's our great diversion. I mean, it was given in our history in both world wars. There were special exemptions given to it as an essential industry because it took our minds off all our troubles, and it had the chance to do that here, and they blew it.
60-game season. A lot of teams have been shut down because they can't get testing right, all that stuff. Do you think it's going to play out? Do you think we'll get it?
Yeah, they need to change the rules a little bit more because, unfortunately, with a 60-game schedule, the problem in baseball of the specialized relief pitcher is going to get even worse. So you're not going to have any more starting pitchers. They're going to figure out a different paradigm where no pitcher faces a hitter a second time. So you'll start a pitcher, and he'll throw 40 pitches, and then he'll pitch 2 days later and throw 40 pitches. And it's just going to be too much changing pitchers, and it's going to be boring.
And do you think it's legitimate then? You win the World Series at 60. Do you care? Like if you're a White Sox fan now.
Yeah, I mean, whoever wins is going to celebrate, and the other 30 teams are going to say it's fake. So, it's tough. I mean, it's better to play than not play. But I think that they needed to be a little bit more creative about how to make this work. Like I feel like the wild card thing they came up with a few years ago was really exciting, where the two teams play a sudden death game, and then that team has to go on the road to play the team that won the spot in the playoffs. Like I thought that was good because it created a high enough mountain for that wild card team that they really had to outperform to, because otherwise what's the point of having a great regular season? And so in this case, I think it would be great if they figured out a way to eliminate teams every week. So in other words, you start the season, and if you don't win, if you're one of, if there's 30 teams and 4 teams win only 2 games, their season's over. And now the next week, another 4 teams are whacked. And so it becomes a little bit more like, the public appetite now for like these reality shows.
It really does.
It's always about eliminating things. But these 60 games really don't mean anything.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I would think either what you just described is very interesting. It's very British soccer where you earn the right to keep playing. Or I almost feel like you got to, for this year, widen the playoffs and just say, screw it, let 10 teams in and let them fight out.
The playoffs are the first day.
Right, yeah, and just play a big
final, the NCAA brackets.
I love it. Again, White Sox fan, this has to be painful too because I really feel like the White Sox had reloaded and were built to really make some noise in the Central this year.
Yeah, it's the 12-year rebuild was finally coming to fruition, and and we were getting a lot of big promises, but you just never know how. There was a couple of untested products that had to pan out, but Tim Anderson might be the most underrated player in baseball. I mean, he's just a phenomenal. I mean, he's probably the best shortstop in the American League right now, and you never hear his name.
And you got Dallas Keuchel, some good arms. I mean, it was gonna. I really think the Central was wide open.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You said the 12-year rebuild. Yeah, I just remember 15 years ago, the certain White Sox team dancing all over my childhood dreams. But anyway, so
I wasn't going to bring it up. That's why I said 12 and not 15.
No, you know what? Bring it up. And I'll be honest with you too. Like, so my first memory of baseball where I realized that it can suck was 1986. The Astros and the Mets, one of the greatest playoff series ever. I'm 10 years old.
Mike Scott, probably the best pitcher in the National League, right?
Oh, Mike Scott was, yeah. And of course, being accused of doctoring the ball every 5 seconds. Of course, we'll probably find out he did. But so by the time the World Series was over, I was still stoked that we were there. Like, that's really what oh, well, whatever. It's fine. No, but it was a good team. And you know what? You have to hand it to the White Sox. Like, a lot of White Sox fans up there, family members up there. You guys are going to be at the Austin Revolution Film Festival. This is the first public announcement that you're bringing your film Two Dum Micks. What was that experience like getting that made? And first, let me give you a compliment. You understand what a short film is. So many short filmmakers don't understand that you still got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you definitely.
Thank you. I love the genre, and I feel like that when they fail, they just meander. And so I really wanted to be like the old-fashioned short that you'd see before a movie. And the only people that make those now that are really concise is Pixar. You know, every once in a while you get a little animated short, and it's its own little thing, and it's so fun, and it's like a little appetizer before the movie. So I grew up watching Abbott and Costello and the Three Stooges, and the Little Rascals were my heroes. And then when I got into acting, I discovered Buster Keaton, and I delved into Charlie Chaplin a little more, and Howard Lloyd, and a lot of other people where I learned more about that how much that kind of acting is an art form and not just an entertainment. But Abbott and Costello really were a touchstone for Two Dum Micks, and I love Sean Astin, and we did Memphis Belle together in 1990. And we don't run in the same circles. He lives in LA, I don't, and I'd see him every 5 or 6 or 7 years, and I'd be like, oh man, I love this guy. Or when I go see Rudy or Lord of the Rings or whatever, I thought, this is one of the guys I always wanted to work with again. And it just never came to pass. So I wrote this thing, and I called him up, and I said, Sean, you want to do this thing? And we can maybe turn it into like an ongoing thing. Like, we'll create these characters and then go back and revisit it. And he was like, yeah, I'm in. And it was just such a great, great experience. We shot it over a day and a half in LA, and Sean's one of those great people. You just want to be around him. He's everything that comes through his characters. His heart. He's not a tall guy, but his heart is about 10 feet tall.
I really love the film, and I think you're exactly right about that. And so will we get to see more of those characters eventually once we're done with all of this nonsense in the pandemic?
We're trying. I've been trying to get somebody to put up the money. I put up the money to make this one, and I'm trying to get somebody to put up the money to make some more of them. And there's been interest. I have 9 scripts ready. And the funny thing is that shooting this one with Sean, I really figured out the characters, and the subsequent ones that are coming are even better. I promise. Like, I've totally figured out the dynamic even more, and I'm really excited to make more. And Sean's ready to go, and we're just standing by, waiting for Sugar Daddy.
Was there a big challenge directing yourself?
It is hard to direct yourself. I did it in my feature, 2 Tickets to Paradise, and I don't recommend it. But in this case, it was I only want to direct myself if I can't get anybody else better to do it. And if the question is, if some great, like comic director was available and interested in coming to direct this thing, I would have stepped aside in a second, because the guys who are successful at directing themselves, I mentioned Chaplin earlier, Woody Allen, Spike Lee, the people that are good at it tend to play a kind of a version of themselves that they play over and over again. So They're not really inventing a new character. But I was trying to develop this character and like a bit based on Bud Abbott, that he's a little bit of the darker one of the pair, and the other guy has the bigger heart. So I kind of knew where I was going, and I had written it obviously, but it's very hard to direct yourself, because you have to definitely bifurcate your perceptions. You're looking at the shot, you're looking at the scene, trying to look at Sean, and then you're trying to manage yourself. And the best acting, I think, comes when you get yourself into kind of a childlike state, and directing is really more of like a mom or a dad state.
A couple more questions. You really have a real diverse resume on your oeuvre, right? Like you've got movies where you're a little darker with 8 Men Out, or even Memphis Belle. Your characters going to some dark places. Having been in a combat zone, not like that, but been in one, I totally get it. But you've also got Dish, who is the hopeful romantic, and then you've got The Cutting Edge, which was my daughter's first favorite movie, by the way. She ran around the house saying, toe pick. Anytime I asked her anything, it was obnoxious. She's excited about this, though. But which do you like to do? Do you like to be a little darker, or do you kind of like the little bit more of a hopeful role?
Earlier in my career, I was very aware of, like I mentioned with Field of Dreams, I was very aware of trying to be diverse and to try and not repeat myself and play a different character. Right around the time of Memphis Belle, I did another movie called A Day in October, where I played a Danish resistance fighter in a Danish-made movie, and it was in English, but I was like doing a Danish. It was very much trying to expand what people's perception of what I might be able to do. Because when you do theater, you play everything, and it's not really ever a problem, or at least it was then. I know now there's some different stuff coming down the pike with political correctness in terms of casting. But anyway, it's always fun to make people laugh. I don't think I ever had more fun in the business than I had 5 years ago doing 2.5 Men with John Cryer. I mean, the sitcom life is the life for me, because those laughs are honest. Like, I always thought that sitcoms were like, that was like computer generated laughing or whatever, but you got 3,000 people in that stage at Warner Brothers having the greatest night of their life because it's their favorite show. They waited in line 6 hours.
Yeah.
They love John Cryer. They can't wait to get in there. And, and so and if you knock it out of the park, they give it right back to you. So I really enjoyed that experience. I'd love to do another sitcom.
I would love to see you in more stuff. Like I said, it was a real treat. And the best part is I don't judge the films at ARF. So the film came in through 3 judges with, I think, like a 9.7. So I was like,
oh, awesome.
Yeah, no, it really, and I think because we have filmmakers from all over the country as our judges, and they really, I think, nailing the form is, most 12-minute shorts could have been 7. This was perfect. All right, before we head out then, World Series pick, who you got?
Well, it's tricky. A dark horse for me is the Mets because of pitching. And then, you got to look at the other teams that have the studs, that have really the great pitchers. And I'm not exactly sure who's going to come out of the gate as themselves, but the Dodgers are loaded. They're always loaded. The White Sox have a couple good pitchers. The Yankees have pitchers. I think it's really going to be like, playoff baseball very early, like I said, with the pitching changes. So the teams with the pitching, I think, are going to go. And so if I had to choose one, I'm going to say the Mets.
I love that pick. DB, thanks so much for being on Let's Get To. It's been an honor, and I can't wait to talk to you again as we get closer to the festival.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your service. I should have said that sooner.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
And now, on to close it out, the right-hander from Houston, Texas, James Christopher.
And thank you so much for joining Let's Get To. We want to thank the Fargo Moorhead RedHawks for having us out. It's been a blast to come up from Texas, see some really, really good baseball. We got another great episode coming for you next week. We're going to be visiting the Sugarland Skeeters Constellation Energy Field League. We're looking forward to see what kind of team Rocket Roger Clemens is putting on the field. So see you next week. And until next time, let's get to.